Hello and welcome to this introductory video for the Ares battle system. In this video, I want to show you how to get started using Ares and sort of what using it might look like in the context of a simple battle scene. So what I have here is I have a basic 2D scene with our hero and player character and an enemy slime. All of these sprites, by the way, are from opengameart.org, and I have linked them and their licenses in the description below. For this example, this is the scene we're going to be working with. We're not going to be doing any dynamic spawning of enemies. We're not going to be making them prefabs and spawning them like that or setting them up through code. The only thing we will be coding is our battle manager, which we will use to control our UI and set up the battle. But before we get to that, I want to start setting up our actors here. So let's first take a quick look at the scene itself. We have our world, everything is just sprites. We have our slime character, which is just a sprite renderer alongside an animator component, as well as a hero character, which has the same setup, as well as a bow that is currently hidden, which is a sprite renderer as well. It's going to be used for a bow attack. So both of these have animator components, and they just have transitions based on attack melee, attack bow, and hit. And same goes for the slime. And you will notice I use the exact same name here, the attack melee. And the reason for this is we can both set up individual actors to respond to abilities and play animations, or we can set it up from the ability or item. And the advantage of doing it that way is that no matter which one of them performs the ability, the correct animation will be played if you keep the names consistent. I have also set up animators on the buttons in my UI, which is just a simple button component with the text inside. And all this does is, based on an open or close parameter, it's going to show or hide these buttons. But first things first, we are going to set up these two characters as actors. So let's go to our hero here. I'm going to collapse these two. I'm going to add a component. I'm going to search for actor, and I'm going to select player actor. And this just means that it's player controlled, or at the very least, it waits for input. The AI actor, on the other hand, has some randomness. At this point, it just chooses a random ability or item to use, but it's mostly meant to be overridden with your own custom AI logic. But for our hero, we are going to add a player actor component, I should say. We need a display name, and in this case, I'm just going to call her hero, because why not? We're going to leave all of these values as is, except I'm going to bump her speed up to 100, just so that she goes first. Next up, it is asking for a list of abilities, which we will be making in 1 second. In fact, let's just make those first. So inside my project folder here, I'm going to go to Create, Ares, and I'm going to create an ability. And I'm going to create an ability called Punch. I'm going to make its display name Punch. We don't care about the description in this case. Base duration is irrelevant. This is used for if you have any kind of like external setup that you want to do for a specific ability and you want it to have an extra little delay, that's what you might use this value for. We want to target a single actor. It's going to be just a very simple punch to one individual. We only want it to be able to target opponents, not itself. It is targetable. If this is off, it's going to choose a random target instead. We want it to be able to target alive enemies only, and only those participating in the battle. Non-participating actors might be actors who are in a group but not currently out to fight. So a typical example of this could be Pokemon, where you only have between 1 and 3 Pokemon out in the battlefield, but you have 6 in total in your party that need to be defeated for the battle to be over. Then turn towards target. We can leave this off. This is an option specifically for 3D battles, where the actor will try to face whoever they are targeting. Next up are its actions, which, as you can see, is currently empty. So this is our action chain list. And let's just start by adding a single action. We have a choice between damaging, healing, buffing or debuffing, afflicting with the status affliction, curing the status affliction, and setting or unsetting environment variables. For this, we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to damage the chosen target. We are going to hit them with, let's say, random power between 20 and 35. We want it to have a 100% hit chance, just so we know everything works. And the duration, I'm not sure how long the animation is exactly. Let's say the animation is 2 seconds, and we want it to damage the opponent at 1 second. You would set the duration to 2 and the process time to 0.5. We're not going to do that because I want to show you something different. I'm going to set the duration to 0.33, which is, I think, the time when she hits the slime. And so we're going to set the process time to 1. And rather than set the duration to be the exact amount as the animation, since we're setting it anyway, we might as well say, wait for the animation to finish before continuing. The way to do that is to enable the animation effect. I'm going to quickly go to my hero animator. I'm going to copy the parameter name, go back to our punch, paste that in. The parameter type is a trigger, and then we want to set our delay to wait for the animation to finish before telling the battle system we're done with this ability. Now it does have a little warning here. Animation delays are only supported on actors that have an actor animation component attached. So let's go back to our hero here and add that real quick, which is going to be the actor animation. And this is going to say allow all the default ability animation. We're going to leave that on. We don't need to do anything else, but while we're here, we might as well enable take damage and set it to trigger the hit. And then same deal here, wait for the animation to finish before continuing. Next up, we want to add it to our abilities list. So we're going to hit the little plus sign here, and we're going to add punch. And we don't want to override any durations. That's all fine and dandy. I'm going to set up the same for the slime real quick, and after that we are going to take a look at setting up the battle and getting our ability to show up in the UI here. So I'm going to just duplicate this punch. I'm going to call it Gnaw. I'm going to change the name here, and let's just say that the slime always does a constant power of 25. Now the duration for this, I'm going to also let it do on this. Let's look at the animation real quick and see when it hits. Go to slime attack. So let's say it hits here, which is at frame 35, which is just over half a second. Let's go to Gnaw and let's just set this to 0.55. And that's all we need. Hang on, I think I messed that up. Because it only goes to 60. Nope, never mind, I'm good. Okay. So that's going to be the Gnaw ability. I don't think we need to change anything else. Again, we could just set this to the total duration of the animation and set our process time to something lower. It all comes down to the same. The reason you can set the duration here rather than always waiting for animations or stuff, one, you might not have animations, but two, your ability might be dependent on external effects. Maybe you have a particle effect, maybe there's some fire involved, or some missile casting, or whatever goes on in the environment, and you want to add that to this, and that would not be baked into the animation time. So with that said, we're going to go to our slime. We are going to get out of animation preview mode, because I need the animator to be enabled. And we're going to add our AI actor component. And I'm going to name him Slime, and Slime is probably going to have significantly less HP than our adventurer. And let's also lower its attack a little bit, and defense, whatever. And our player has a speed of 100, which means he's going to go first. So I'm going to quickly add our Gnaw here. And same as before, I'm just going to add the animation component so it can allow for the delay. I don't have a hit animation for the slime, so we're not going to enable that event. With all of that said, we now need to set up our battle itself, add our actors to it, and make our UI work. And this is where the scripting kicks in. So I'm going to go to my, let's see, where is it? Scripts folder here inside of Ares, which is in the imported package. I'm going to go to development and I'm going to duplicate the battle manager template script. Just going to duplicate that and then drag that into our project's scripts folder here and then collapse this real quick because we don't need to see all of that. I'm then going to rename this to battle manager 2D. And inside my scripting editor here, I'm going to rename our class as well. So first things first, you can already see we're going to need some battle rules. And let me just quickly go here, set up a manager object, and add this as a component. Here we go. So it's already asking for a battle rules object. And the battle rules is just basically the configuration for your battle. So again, I'm going to go to the create menu, Ares battle rules, and I'm just going to call it battle rules 2D. Stay consistent. Here you can set your max rounds, whether to progress automatically or handle that through a custom script of your own, the time between certain events that happen, whether animation events are allowed to delay the battle execution or whether they aren't. Just a bunch of convenience methods and settings to help customize your battle. And I'm going to leave all of these the same, except I'm going to go ahead and just for good measure, actor can face target. I'm going to set that to never, because again, that's a 3D option. Should we by accident enable it in one of our abilities, the battle rules will stop it from doing it anyway. The abilities basically put in a request and the battle rules then verify whether or not it should do anything with that. And then the actor sort I'm going to leave by speed, just so our player character always goes first. And with that said, I'm going to go to our manager and I'm going to drag in these rules. And I'm going to save my scene. So looking at our script here, we have a lot of things laid out for us already. We have our basic listeners for when an actor needs input, target, or action, when a battle ends, all of that stuff. We are setting up our battle here on line 20, and then we are setting up our groups here. Now these names don't really matter. You could display them if you wanted to at some point. Battles in Ares are not limited to just 2 groups. If you want, you can have up to any number of them and have them duke it out amongst each other in some kind of battle royale style fashion. In this case, we're just going to have group 1 and group 2, which is just fine. And then on defeat, there's a listener to each group, which ends the battle with either victory or a loss. Then we have a little stub here that says, add all actors to their respective groups. So first of all, how do we get our actors? Well, in this example, we are just going to create a serialized field for each of them. And again, normally you might spawn them dynamically through code, or you might obtain them in some other way through a scriptable object, whatever you have. But for now, this is how we're going to do it. So we're just going to say actor hero, and we're just hard coding them in actor slime. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say group 1, add actor, and we're going to add the hero. And she is participating. She is not just in our party somewhere. And then we're going to do the same for group 2, add actor, slime, true. And once they're in there, we can start the battle. And that's all fine and dandy. So let's see how this goes. Before we hit play, don't forget to assign our fields here, hero and slime. So let's hit play and just see what happens. All right, we get a battle started message. It's progressing the battle with a reset state. It's starting round 1 and then it says waiting for input from hero. Awesome. So how are we going to do that? We're going to go back to our manager script here. Now we have a show action input method, and this is going to be called whenever an actor needs to select an ability, item, or turn skip. Those are the 3 valid options. Now we're going to be ignoring turn skips. We're going to be ignoring items. We're only going to be focusing on the abilities. And it says that action input.valid abilities have filtered list of all abilities that can be used given the current state of the battle. The action input is just a parameter that it gets from here. To select an item or ability, call the respective callback method inside action input. These callbacks will return a successful. So when we get this, we want to iterate over our valid abilities, which are all the abilities that can be cast in the current context of the battle, and set our buttons appropriately. So first thing we need to do is we need a reference to our buttons. So I'm going to be using UnityEngine.ui. I'm going to be adding a serialized field. It's going to be a button array, and I'm going to be calling it buttons. Starting here inside of our little stub, we're going to be iterating over all of these for int I is 0, I is less than action input, .valid abilities, .length, and we're just going to assume we always have enough buttons for our example here. Increase I, and then we need to do three things. We need to open the button, we need to set the text to the ability's name, and we need to add an on-click event. So let's go. First of all, we're going to grab the current button, and we're going to get component. And if you remember, we have an animator component attached to our buttons, which opens with a open trigger. So we're going to simply set not the target, but a trigger. And the trigger is called open. I'm going to do something real quick here, which is I'm going to store the ability that we're currently working on, and I'm going to set that to action input .valid abilities I. Next, I am going to grab the text component, which is a child of the button. So I'm going to say get component and children text, and I'm going to set the text to the ability data's display name. Normally, you'd probably have this inside some kind of button component that handles styling or what have you. You can find an example of this in the example scene that I ship with Ares, but for now, we're just going to be doing it in here, nice and dirty, because we're not going to be doing anything fancy with it. What we do need to do is we need to add the on-click event. So we're going to say buttons I.onClick. We're going to add a listener, and we're just going to be doing it as a lambda here. When it's clicked, we need to do a few things. First of all, we need to call the respective callback method inside the action input. So if we type action input, we can see we have an ability select callback, and we're going to pass in the ability. This method does return a bool on whether or not it was successful. In this case, it's always going to be successful. The reason is here is, should you decide to expand Ares and sort of layer your own code on top of it, there might be situations where you want to block a valid ability for some reason. And you might handle that in different ways. So you could say if action input.ability select callback, then play a success sound, otherwise play an error sound. So we're going to keep this wrapped just for good measure, even though there's no way it can fail. And then what we need to do is we need to clean up after ourselves. We need to close all of our buttons again, and then we need to clear all of their on-click things, because we're going to be using the same buttons for the target selection. So let's just copy this for loop here and change I to be J, because programmers love their descriptive names. There we go, J++. And then we need to select this new button, iterate over all of them again, and we're going to just say onClick, remove all listeners. As well as we're going to paste this line, make sure we're referencing buttons J, not I, and we're going to set the close trigger. So quick recap, the Ares battle system is going to ask for input, which will trigger our show action input method here, which will open all of the buttons needed, which will set its display name, or the text to the ability's display name, And then when clicked, it's going to clean up after itself. Let's see, first of all, if I made any syntax errors. Ah, awesome. We do need to make sure though that we are assigning our buttons. So I'm just going to quickly lock my inspector, go to my canvas, select my buttons, and just drag them in here. Awesome. And unlock my inspector. Let's hit play. And there we go. There's our punch button, which is the one ability that our hero currently has. And if I click it, it's going to close and we have selected this ability. Now, since it's a targetable ability, it's going to want a target. Now, in our rules, we could say that it can auto-select a single option target for ability. So since there's only one option, there's one valid target, we can tell it to just automatically select that one, and that'll be fine and dandy. In our case, you might have multiple enemies. Let's leave this off. Let's just quickly implement this target input. And we only need the overload for the target input single actor. So let me just copy paste this and modify it as needed. All right, and we're back. So just a quick recap, we are going over all the buttons, we're caching the current valid target, we are opening as many buttons as we need, setting the text, and then cleaning up after ourselves and calling the target select callback if that is valid. So let's go over back to Unity. And what should happen now is we choose punch, then we choose slime, the character attacks, and then the slime attacks, and we go to round 2. So let's see what happens. Okay, we can select punch, and then we can select slime. Now you can see that the text is already set before it's fully closed. I'm not going to worry about that for now. This is all very dependent on like how you choose to implement your UI and stuff. But if I now click slime, he's going to punch that. He's taking some damage, and if we click slime, we can see that reflected. His HP is now 0. Our ability was a bit too strong. We have just ended the battle. Okay, let's up his defense quite a bit. Let's set it to 100. Let's try it again. Punch the slime. And his HP is still 0. How powerful did I make this punch exactly? Apologies for the interruption there. I seem to have set the HP to 6 rather than 60, which explains why he was so easily defeated. I was confused there for a second. So let's try this again. Hit punch, punch the slime, and there we go. Now it's at 43, and the slime attacks, hits the character who you saw played the animation, and now we're in the second round, and we can keep going ad infinitum. So that is sort of the basic setup here. In the case of the other ability I had planned, which was with the bow, it's pretty much the same kind of thing. I'm going to call this bow attack. This, instead of attack melee, should be attack bow. It's going to be triggered. Everything else is going to be the same. It's going to be bow or arrow shot, whatever you want to call it. The only thing that's different, let's make this a constant power. And now 40. And we would also add the instantiation effect. The instantiation effect, it requires a effect instance, which I have already set up. All I've done for that is I have my arrow prefab here, which also has an animator component and a sprite renderer, which handles itself. And then I just added a instantiation effect instance component. And this just makes it show up in here, makes it targetable. I'm going to select arrow, and we are going to parent it to our hero's bow to start off with. So we're just going to use the name in this case. We could also set the transform and do it that way, but that's not supported from here. This works if you are using the effect directly on, for instance, if you have the hero and you're adding an actor instantiation component, then you can set the transform directly. So for now, we're just going to be using the name here, bow. We're going to parent the bow or the arrow to the bow. And we're going to make sure to give it a scale of 1 in all axes. We're not going to be using a delay because I've synced up the animations to just fit. We're then going to go back to our hero. We are going to click the plus sign on our abilities. We're going to add the bow ability. Save our scene, hit play. And now we have 2 abilities showing up in our UI. And if we click blow, we then select our slime target. And there we go. And our slime has taken the appropriate amount of damage. And that is sort of the basic gist of it. Now, obviously, there's a lot more you can do with Ares. You can modify your battle by playing with these sorts of settings. There are items, there are environment variables, there are status afflictions. We could give our dude a burn right now. And at the end of every round or turn, whenever you want, that's going to get processed and inflict damage in some way, or it might make you stronger. There's also environment variables, as I mentioned, which can be used for things like weather conditions. Maybe rain makes slime stronger. Or maybe damaging attacks are going to be half damage for the next 3 turns. These are all sort of filters that you can set up using those types of objects. There's different kinds of actions. We are only using damaging types right now. We could make an arrow that heals someone, or buffs a stat, or does any of the other things lined out here. But this is sort of the basic gist of how to get started with Ares, how the system works, and what a typical implementation might look like. Now again, if you are creating your own game like this, you probably want to set up things from code. You could take your slime, set it up just the way you want, make it a prefab, instantiate that. If you want something a bit more versatile, for instance, you want all of the stats to be dynamic, stuff like that, you can also set them up completely from code. There are methods available for initializing all of the actor components, including the actor animation, audio, and instantiation. You can customize everything and do everything through code, should you so desire. Last thing I'm going to show you real quick is these stats here, attack, defense, and speed. These are built in, but you can add your own. They are located within the resources folder. It doesn't matter which one, as long as they're inside a resources folder. And the way you add them is same as any other Ares object. Just add an Ares stat. And let's call this, I don't know, Arcanology. You then go to your hero, and she has an Arcanology stat with the label missing. Because I wasn't thinking, and I completely forgot to give it a display name. So we're going to do that real quick. And as you can see, we have several different options here. And we can see with different stages how much it will be. If we go back to our hero now, we have a nice little label for it, Arcanology. And using this you can use this in complicated ways. You can modify Ares to take advantage of the stat somehow. You can also use it right out of the gate by going to an ability. Let's take a bow ability and let's choose a damage formula. Now the way you might use this is you can type in your own formula here. Here are all the different tokens you can use. So let's just say that its damage is directly equal to its Arcanology level. So if you want to do that, you might do caster underscore Arcanology. And now since our hero has an Arcanology level of 50, if we go here, if we now fire our bow, select our slime so we can keep 9 on his HP, select the slime, poof, it takes 25 damage. This is based on the defense and the attack stat of the hero as well. But just like that, you can instantly start using that stat in your formulas and make it a real part of your gameplay without diving straight into the source. So with that, I hope that you found this video useful. I hope that you like this system. I hope it seems useful to you. And if you have any questions or feedback, something you'd like to see or you're not sure you can do with the system, please shoot me a message either on here, email, or through the asset store. And I will do my best to answer you. But with that, I thank you for watching and I wish you a good day.